Odd Walking Podcast. I've got a great guest tonight, and I don't want to take away any time from him, so let's get right to it. Everyone, I want to welcome my maybe sometimes people throw the word friend around. I think certainly you are of the friend cloth. My friend and um a mentor that I've observed just through life and through who you are, Mr. Tim Vassar. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, good. It's great to see you again, Bob. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Appreciate all your kind words as well.
Oh, not a problem. So, for the folks watching this now, there was I think we've maybe traded messages over the years of, hey, how are you? Oh, this looks good. Little comment here and there, and certainly kept up from a distance. And we spoke for a few minutes before we went live here, and um, I could tell that we were starting to catch up a little bit, and I thought, oh, why toss good content that's not being recorded here? Um, and we were one of the things we were talking about was this was something that's not on any of the notes that I have. Um, is the tradition that you have with your wife on celebrating multiple anniversaries, and you just had one, and again, you'll forgive me. I think you said it was the anniversary of your engagement.
That's correct. Yes.
And what an amazing tradition that you have, and um, tell me a little bit about that. And I think you said your son started that too.
He did. My wife and I have been celebrating three anniversaries every year. One is our wedding anniversary on December 27th, which is we're getting ready in December to celebrate our 45th anniversary. We also celebrate our first date anniversary, which is August 28th of 1976. So we've been together for a long time. And just yesterday, April 1st, we celebrated our engagement anniversary. So, yes, Bob, I did propose on April Fool's Day.
April Fools did.
Yes.
Now, at the time, I'm sure over the years there've been jokes, but at the time, was there a do you mean it? Is this a joke?
No, I didn't even realize it was that day. We were both in college. She was in nursing school in Indianapolis. I was at Butler, and it was literally the only day of the week that I was going to see her. It was on a Sunday. I had an away track meet the day before. I can't even remember who we ran against, but um, so that ring was kind of burning a hole in my pocket. And so when I went over on Sunday, that's when it happened. Not with all the fanfare that you see today, but nonetheless,
Oh, that's big now on social media with all the reels and the stories and the streams. Some of the work that goes into it, you think one of two things is happening. You either are really into this person and you're doing it for the love of it, or you're doing it for the show of it.
right. And you better have a pretty solid guarantee that she's going to say yes, or you're going to look pretty doggone foolish.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
One of the I want to get into because I think you have a resume that is very impressive. You had mentioned there in the comment that um, you had a track meet. Um, Forgive me if I missed something here, but uh,
mhm,
uh, f- I don't want to say former educator because you're always an educator, but a retired educator. You were a coach.
correct.
I know at the time at Lake Central, while I clearly am not athletic, I think you did track there, and then
Right.
once I left there, you still, if I'm not mistaken, you were you an administrator at one point?
Yes, when I finished teaching at Lake Central in 2001, so the year after you graduated, Bob, that was my last year of teaching. I left there to become an assistant principal at Griffith High School, and I did that for 2 years. And Crown Point recruited me to come to Crown Point to be an AP at the brand new high school. And when I was there for 4 years, I was asked to be the principal of the brand new Colonel John Wheeler Middle School in 2007. And so I was there for 10 years, retired in 2017. Uh, that retirement lasted all of about 2 weeks. Uh, IU asked me if I would come and lead their program for student teachers, which I said yes. I thought that was going to be a short while, but I ended up doing that for 6 years. So I've been officially retired now. This is my second school year being retired.
Now, what made you so my sister, who is almost 8 years younger than I am, 8.5 years younger. So you were at this point you were done with Lake Central, done with Griffith at Crown Point. Um, she had gone to Ball State, and now she's a middle school teacher down in Central Indiana.
That's
She
awesome.
she teaches history at one of the middle schools down there, and so I see education differently through my sister now. What made you take that jump from in one classroom molding 20 some odd kids at one time to I'm going to go into administration, which assistant principal to head principal, lead principal, whatever you want to call it. What was your what was that path like for you?
Well, that's a great question, Bob. Actually, I described that pretty well. I don't know if you read my first book yet. My first book came out, geez, 2018, 2019. Jeremiah wasn't just a bullfrog.
And I'm throwing
Yeah,
that up here. We'll get to that in a little bit
yeah,
too. I mean, you can say some of that, but yeah, no, I'm excited to get into that too. So
yeah.
you described that in the book.
Right, I did. It was something that I was thinking about for a couple of years uh, because I just wanted to. I love education. I've always loved education, and maybe I could affect more people by going into administration. But it's like I also love teaching. I loved being in the classroom with kids like you. I loved coaching the kids I had. I looked forward to being there every day. Um, and then when you made the jump, I made the jump, and I didn't look back because there's always still an opportunity, even as a principal, to teach. And so I would spend a good portion of my days as a principal, especially in the middle school, with kids. Any paperwork that I had to do, um, I did it very early in the morning before anybody arrived. That way I could spend my days in classrooms, spending time talking with kids, uh, having fun times with kids, enjoying. I didn't want to be the principal where everybody was afraid of.
And,
When you're not
that
approachable, it's you're just a
well, and
figure.
that's part of it. So some of the folks I know, I have a couple of acquaintances that are actors, and I've asked them a question years ago, and I wonder, you know, actors tend to like directors who were actors.
Hmm.
And so I'm wondering if you felt going from the classroom to being an administrator, if you had a different perspective, and I know that's mostly the track, going from the classroom to admin, but did you feel that you were still able to connect to them on that same level of, hey, I was doing this 2 years ago. I now have different responsibilities as the administration, but I know what you're dealing with because I was just there. Or did you find that as soon as you got into administration, there was a gulf, a divide between yourself and teachers?
Well, I, I From my standpoint, no. Um, I taught for 21 years before I became an administrator. So I had a lot of experience under my belt. So it wasn't just teaching for a couple of years and getting out to say, well, I want to make more money, which is a really terrible reason
Because
to do that.
but we've I know just through some of my other educator friends that they've seen that as soon as they're done student teaching, they go into the classroom, and a couple years in, they're going for that education to move up and on.
Right, which I would really discourage that. I think you need to have some experience under your belt in many, many different areas. And I'm really glad that I waited until after 21 years. Because when you're a principal, also you need to lead them, and you're teaching teachers at the same time. Well, if you don't have any experience, how are they supposed to look to you to have answers for them or to guide them in their teaching? So I don't think I had a problem with that, with credibility at all with teachers. It is an entirely different role, though. When the wheel's in your hands, it's a whole different place. It certainly is.
I can only imagine. One of the we had talked about how you were a coach, and you like that. Is that something that once you get into that administrative role, do you have to give that up, or do you were you still chomping at the bit to get out there and coach?
Well, what you like to do, you find ways to do what you like to do. So, for example, when I was a an assistant principal at Crown Point, we were able to, through my connections with one of my best friends was the commissioner of Indiana High School Athletic Association. And so we were able to host a sectional at Crown Point High School for the first time. Well, I was able to be the meet director for that,
Oh,
and
nice.
I was able to get into that. When I was a middle school principal in the wintertime before track and field started, I gave little clinics for athletes, teach them how to hurdle and things of this nature, and it was great to spend time. So I got my little fix along the way, and we'll continue to do that. Anybody who needs help, I'll be happy to help them. So
Speaking of, um, I want to kind of button up some of your resume before we get into some good topics here.
sure,
Um, Most recently, speaking of helping where there needs help, your role as a public servant
yes,
on the school board.
yes,
Um, so now we've really made a transition. We've been a teacher for a couple of decades. We now went through several years in administration. It sounds like a couple more than maybe you you had planned on, but you did that for quite a while. And now you've entered the role of an elected official for the school corporation. We don't need to say which one, but um, what what has that been like as an elected official myself? I'm always interested to hear the reasons that people have to get into that role, because that is something, as much as it's still about education, uh, having that moniker on you of an elected is an entirely different beast at times.
hmm
And to be out there. So what brought you to that, where you said, I'm going to fill out this paperwork and I'm going to go ahead and do it?
Well, it was a. Gee, let's see, how can I back up? It's what I did my whole life for 43 years, Bob, in public education, and it's all I ever wanted to do. Um, our pastor at church, um, Ron Johnson,
Yes,
Livingstone's great.
Livingstones, right?
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's also a Lake Central grad, in case you didn't know that. And he was preaching one Sunday, and he talked about there are people in this congregation that really could serve the public, whether that be on town council, school board, police commission, you name
Right.
it. And he said, and as I say that, if you are thinking that is you, it's probably not. And my wife said, I think he's talking to you because at that point, I'd had people before ask, "Hey, are you going to run for school board?" And you've been around schools all your life, and it's like, yeah, I don't think I really want to do that. Um, so when Pastor had said that, um, my wife gave me the big nudge, but but I did a lot of praying. Uh, it's like, is this really what you want me to do? And I had a resounding yes to that, and so I ran, and people believed in me enough to elect me, and so now I'm in my third year of serving on the school board.
That is uh, one thing when you put yourself on a ballot. I've
Hmm.
done it 3 times now. Was not successful the first time in 2011. I was successful in 19 and 23, and it is a very rich and deep experience to put your name out there for your friends and family and neighbors. That you're standing up to be counted in a way that most people I think a lot of people, if you're on social media now and you listen to, a commentary, everybody has an opinion on something. But to stand up and say, put my name down, and this is what I think I can bring to the table. Is this what you're interested in? And then to have on some cold day in November to get, sometimes the weather's awful to get, you know, uh, for my race, I always said, I have to go out and I have to talk to 16,000 people and, hope that they all have different things going on. Everybody has jobs, everybody gets sick, a lot going on. But to get 50% plus one to come out on some cold day in November to say, Bob Starkey, Tim Vassar to do that. Or in my case, the one time not to say,
Hmm.
no, you did all that work. We want someone else. That's it's humbling to both lose and win. And I I want to know what was it like for you on that day? Did you have a good indication that I've got this in the bag, or was it like I don't know? I know some folks that on election night, as soon as 6 o'clock, they go outside and they say, hear ye, the polls are now closed," and they go get a slice of pizza and they go to bed. They said, "I'll wake up in the morning." I don't know if it's nerves. um, how did you
Right.
feel that night?
Well, first of all, I had a really good role model to follow. My dad, Larry, uh, he passed away in 2013, but he served on the school board in Highland for
Okay.
32 years.
Wow.
He passed while he was in office. Um, and I mean, I just learned so much from, I have so much respect for my dad in many ways, but what a tremendous role model. So when he ran for school board, I used basically the same strategy that he used, and it's pretty much the old-fashioned way. It's actually meeting people, and my dad taught all of us kids a long time ago. You have to be a person of your convictions, and say what you mean and do as you say. And in the audience that I have is just one. I'm just trying to please one person,
Yeah.
and none of us are him. But so we had done all the work. We had walked neighborhoods. We had talked to a lot of people. I went to every single event, talking event that was I was invited to go to. Um, so when election day came, we everything was organized quite well. Again, I followed the same model my dad had used, where we had people at every polling place, as I'm sure you do the same thing. Um, so I didn't go in that day, Bob, thinking I'm going to win or I'm going to lose or anything. It's like I gave it my best shot, and what happens happens. And we were fortunate enough to win, and um, I'm thankful to the voters who put up signs for me, people who spoke on my behalf, etc. And I knew I got
I've yeah.
a lot of
I
messages from former students that said, hey, Mr. Vassar, I'm voting for you. It's like, well, that it just makes you feel good that right away you knew you made a difference with them.
It does. It's a roller coaster of adrenaline and emotions where I always said in my head I was saying I'm going to win this. I had to have the a winner's conviction that I'm going to win this. But I always had to work as if I am so far behind.
Absolutely.
And you know, your past really informs your future. When I ran in 2011 and I lost, talk about humbling. You put yourself out there on display. I remember this was back when the Times would update um, the op-ed section at like 2 in the morning would be their refresh. I had my alarm set for 2:30 in the morning, and I'd
Oh
wake
my
up and I'd read it
gosh.
every single day.
Oh,
And so to do all that, you knock on the doors, you wear out a pair of shoes, you exhaust your vocal cords, you're out there in the cold, and then to lose, it's like that was a punch in the gut. But I learned from that, and I said, and it took me 8 years to to grow enough to do it again. I said, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to lose, to talk back to where you said you have your convictions on it, and you're not you will never please everyone, and
nope.
so that can't be your focus. I said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to make the message mine, and that way at 6:01 when the doors are closed, I've done all I can do. I've said
Right.
all I wanted to say. um, because like I said, after loss, it took me years to think, oh well, I should have done this, I should have done that. Well, that's toxic, because if you spend all that time thinking, oh, you mentioned, put up yard signs and doing that stuff. Oh, well, maybe if I just had different locations and people saw, that's all bogus. I mean, you can do a post mortem on any success or failure to say, okay,
Sure.
what worked, what didn't. Um, but I like, and I should have figured. I mean, it's you, the Tim Vassar, to have those convictions. Just say, hey, this is me. I'm here to be weighed and counted in front of you. If you like it, great. If not, I'm still okay. I'm still Tim. I'm still Bob.
Right.
And
Yeah. Man, I answered their questions, in in a genuine way. I've never gone back on those things that people asked, so forth. But in school boards, I think of people run for school board and they just are running because they have an axe to grind, in one area, or they want to get rid of somebody, or they want X,
yeah,
whatever X is. That's really not a good reason to run. I think the reason to run is to serve. And if I have all this expertise and these years of experience in public education, why would I not share that? And so that's really the reason. It
a
is.
phrase I often use, when I see a lot of elected officials now. I'm into my second term. I have worked with politicians from Dyer to DC, and I see all these folks, and I think a lot of times, you're right when you say someone just has an axe to grind or someone has something they're looking for. I like the phrase butcher, baker, candlestick maker. Folks that don't necessarily have a firm, I don't want to say understanding of government, but government bodies work differently than if we were going to open Bob and Tim's pizza shop. It just works different.
That'd probably
And
be a bad
so,
idea, by the way. Just
we'd eat the profits. I know
yeah.
I would. um, but that idea, um, it just sticks. I think it just sticks. That,
Hmm.
and you talked about never going back on what you said. You would answer the questions, and I think some folks that do this, once they realize how deep they are into it, it becomes hard to answer questions honestly.
Hmm.
Especially if you're going into it with an axe to grind. Um,
Right.
Admittedly, one of the things I went into was, for years, I'm talking years. I grew up in Dyer, and when my folks wanted to, um, you know, get out of the 1970s bi-level, homes that are kind of Dyer, wanted a ranch. and I bought the house from him, and so I've been there forever, and I really thought that I kind of understood government, but what got me interested was backyard flooding. The streets weren't getting paved. They bought that house in the late 70s, and here we are, 2018, 2019. Still never been repaved.
Hmm.
The park hadn't been redone in years. All these little things that I said, uh, you know, somebody should do something about this. And to speak to Ron Johnson's, if someone says, if you instantly think, oh, that's me, I want to do that. I think
Yeah.
that's different. I think that's different than I heard a story. Um, when you go and hear a sermon or a lecture, a lot of times there are these church answer stories, which are great, but a lot of them have a story, and one was, um, if every day you drive past something and you look out the window and something's broke, you say, "Man, somebody needs to fix that." Man, somebody needs to fix that. Next day, man, somebody needs to fix that. And then for days and weeks, somebody needs to fix that. At some point, could that not be? And we can debate the philosophical or spiritual beliefs of it, but at some point, I believe this, that is that not maybe God's way of saying, "Hey, Bob, I have sent you in front of this pothole
Yeah.
every day." Kind of like the man on the boat story with God. It's like I've given you these things. I've given you education. I've given you life experience. I've given you opportunities. You're driving past the pothole, man. Fix
Yeah.
the pothole.
Fix the
And
pothole. Absolutely.
and so I think those people with those motivations to, like yourself, you said, "Hey, I have 43 years of doing this. I like educating and shepherding people and being a public servant." And so, um, uh, and that's my 3-minute commentary on some folks do get into this business of being on a ballot and getting elected because they're fulfilling some other need in life. And it's so heartbreaking for the rest of people to, and then I suppose maybe I should back on that and say, we're all filling various needs, but I suppose some are more heartfelt and genuine than others.
Right, right. And then, people, as you alluding to, that maybe will question those convictions. And I always thought, people on social media where they'll put posts up, just like you said about staying up to or setting your alarm for 2 in the morning so you could read the editorial page. Um, I think it's people are really can be really courageous when they're sitting behind a keyboard. Um,
Oh,
but
it is
and
this is the courage maker for so many
yeah,
people.
yeah, and it's why don't we just talk about these things? And I'm not in it for I'm not in it for glory. I've never been in it for glory, for pat myself on the back. I mean, I'm never going to do that. I just want to serve. I've been serving my entire life, and so have the rest of my siblings have been doing the exact same thing, serving other people. So we're just going to continue to do that. And I said, my audience is just one. I don't have anybody else.
Do you find that, and I'm not in your community, so I wasn't there to receive any of the door knocks or any of the mailers or anything. But you, by virtue of being a teacher, I always thought, educators, cops, firemen, always made for um, the possibility for good public servants in elected office because everyone knows them. You get to know your character over time. This is just a one-off question with being elected. Do you find that people stop you at the grocery store and ask you questions? Um, are you of note in your community that people know who Tim Vassar is, and hey, I got this question. My kid is doing this thing at recess, and are they really letting the kids do that now? Whatever it may be. Do you feel you get that a lot?
I don't think I get it enough, to tell you the truth. I do get it sometimes, whether it's at church or at the grocery store, like as you said. Um, but I'd like to get it actually more than I do. Uh, it's a little disheartening sometimes when there's a school board meeting, for example, and the audience is I don't even have to take off my shoes to count. the
Yeah.
number. It's a little disheartening from that, but then you also realize that okay, there's probably people doing this online just like we're doing tonight, uh, and people that are reading the minutes and so forth. So, um, but uh, again, it's just you're just serving. That's and I can't emphasize that enough. It's about being a servant. Same thing I did when I was a principal. I consider myself to be a servant leader, not this top down guy. Let's talk these things through. Um, and I was never a believer in that term buy in. You get people to buy in.
Yeah.
Never believed that my entire life, Bob. I thought my thought on that is if you want people to get on board in another term, is you need to enroll them in the process rather than because if it's just a buy-in, there's only two possibilities there. People are either buying
Or
and,
they're not.
or they're not. And if they're not, you don't have them at all. So
Yeah.
enroll them in the process. Listen to what they're saying. Sometimes their suggestions could be, "Wow, I never really thought of it that way," but you never know that until you talk to people. And same thing being a principal or talking with kids in the classroom. Like when I was your teacher, it's like, "Hey, how's this thing? What do we need to do more here of?"
Yeah.
And you have to listen and respond to those things.
This is I want to move on to the next
Sure.
question, but um just one last. Have you decided if you don't have to answer here. I don't think this will make sense. Have you decided you said you're in your third year. Is this something you want to continue doing, or are you still like, hey, one and done, two and done, we'll see how it goes?
Well,
Um
I would say that my answer to that, Bob, would be real simple. It's like it's not what I want to do. It's what does he want me to do? And if that's what he wants me to do, then I'll do it again. If it's like if that door's going to close, then that's fine. Uh, in fact, I'll talk to you hopefully in a little bit here about a new book that I'm writing. Is about that. Uh,
Oh, I can't wait. Like I already teased the graphic for some folks that you had a picture out there, and I'm looking forward to the author part of the conversation.
sure.
Um, I do want to move into, since we've segued from education to elected official, to which we can now call you the Honorable Tim Vassar.
Oh goodness.
Um, I have a few friends who jokingly have that in their phone, and I there may even be a work document out there that I have the honorable on there. So congratulations, that's something nobody can ever take from you. If you're looking for monikers, um, I want to talk a bit about um, education in the state house. There are
Hmm.
a handful of bills, some that are still being churned out. I think one as recent as last night or the night before had just passed and is on its way to Braun's desk. Um, Education in Indiana is such a passionate topic. I mean, it's passionate, but we're in Indiana, so let's keep it to that. And I think it's passionate because anytime you deal with something that is, I mean, I my boy gets on the bus and the education system has him for 8 or 9 hours and then he comes back to me. And so I'm very concerned, not in a bad way. It's just it's concerning of me. It's a topic of mine of what are you guys doing? And so there's I don't think any goal of any podcast is, well, I take that back. Some people like to rabble rouse.
Yes.
But just to get some of that information out there. So as we talk about, oh, would Tim Vassar be interested in running for school board for a second term? I believe I forget the number, but I think it just passed where school board races are no longer partisan.
Yeah, that in fact, I'll put my glasses on to see that, Bob. Senate Bill 287 is what it did pass, 54-40, and that was just today, I believe, that
Okay.
passed. Um, I know the Indiana School Board Association. That's something they were against. Indiana has been a state that's had nonpartisan school board elections since its inception of
Right.
public education. And I know there's schools, there's two sides to that. Some people believe that they should be partisan elections. Other people are not, and they're usually strong on either side. Um,
Right.
I was actually surprised that that did pass though, because of the history of Indiana never having that. Um, so it'd be interesting to see where it goes from there, and what's also within that. I'm assuming Governor Braun will sign that. He has given no indication that he wouldn't.
Right,
Uh,
right. I think it's as good as done now.
right. So it'd be interesting to see what the effect is of, if it still stands where if you're going to run for school board, you have to state your party, your R or your D. I don't even think there's an I included in this bill.
Well, my understanding was that it is not unlike any other office. You can run as a Republican, you can run as a Democrat, you can run as an independent, but or any oddity, boutique party that may be out there in fashion at the time. I think where that's going to be a shift is for straight ticket voting. So right now, you said there's a couple different viewpoints on this as to whether it's good or bad. Um, I think it's probably fair to say if we're using generalizations, just painting with a broad brush, that by and large it is um, if we're going to say right and left, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal bent, however you want to say that, by and large, and in some of my experience, has been that some of the school board members, and maybe even more. I'm attempting to be delicate with how I wear this on the
Yeah,
left. Want it to be bipartisan in that it adds a little bit of perhaps fidelity to the process of being a school board member, saying, hey, we're not out here being Republican or Democrat on the school board. We're here for the children.
right,
And I think in story and in narration that works. I think in practice sometimes we see that there's then a shift perhaps to the left. Not all the time. Again, very general speaking. And so my guess is the reason why this was voted on is because the folks down at the state house in their you know omniscient knowing of all things said, okay, we're going to use the letter after your name as a litmus test.
hmm,
And when there's a question that's being asked, you kind of know how the Republican's going to answer, you kind of know how the Democrat's going to answer, and this way it will help uh the voters know who they're voting for, which I've always said that's kind of on the voters to know. Seek out these people who are running for office and ask them questions, and hey, what do you think should be allowed in classrooms? What do you think shouldn't be? What's your stance on this? And if you ask the question and they answer one way and you vote for them and they do something different, then you vote them out. You know, I
right.
mean, every 4 years there's term limits. You vote them out. Um, as someone who is on the school board, do you see this impacting you? Um, Knowing that if you decide to run, or any of your colleagues or friends that you may know in this position, and it is so new. I think in the last 24 hours, this has been done. So there's probably a lot of school board members thinking, how does this impact me? Now, possibly, I know I'm sucking up the oxygen here. Possibly in 88 of the 92 counties, it's not going to matter. It's going to be the same, Republican folks on there. But for the other counties, I look at, Lake County, for example. There are a lot of red municipalities that have school boards that may be a little more blue, maybe a little more purple. And so now that you have to pick, is it going to do one of two things? Is it going to make some of these school boards more red? Is it going to pull more people out? Is it going to make some of these municipalities more blue? I'm wondering, have you thought about what the impact of declaring a party means for a school board?
Well, that In your theory, I mean, I understand your theory. We may not be in total agreement with that. I'm not a big fan of this new law that's coming out.
Right.
I believe in nonpartisan school board elections because I think assumptions are made. Uh, as you said, well, people can say, well, let's say that they're going to be, okay. Well, he's a Democrat, so I know that he or she is going to vote this way on these issues. How do you know that?
You don't.
You don't. For example, if I put down say, okay, by the way, you have to run as how you voted in the primaries too.
Well, and the last two. So
Right.
you may get let's say Tom Jones is running for the Lake Central School Board, and they passed a law a couple years ago where you have to have voted in two of the last elections you voted in the
Hmm.
same party to be in that party.
Correct.
So we may have Tom Jones, my generic name, that may not qualify for that, or because they wanted to be nonpartisan, they now have to pick a party. And in order to be a Republican or Democrat, you're going to need the county chair of that party to say, okay, you are this or that. When some of these folks, in your position, maybe wanted to stay away from that. To say, hey, Indiana's one of the few, not few states, I don't know how many, 14, 24 states, whatever it is, where you have to declare your party in a primary. Um, that I know there's some folks that just don't like to vote in primaries for that reason.
Exactly. That's exactly, you're exactly right, Bob, what you're saying. So uh, let's say that we have qualified candidates for the school board, but they've made a habit not to vote in the primaries. Now they can't even run for school board.
Well,
That-
and that's where, and that's they could, but now their options are quite limited. They have to
yes.
decide, do I want to run as a Republican, in which case I need to talk with the county chair to authorize me as a Republican? Do I want to run as a Democrat, go through the same process? Or do I want to run as an independent, which almost takes you off the map completely, because folks go in there and there's a lot of straight ticket voting.
Right.
And um, again, I haven't read through the bill. I can't foresee the logistics of them excluding that from the straight party ticket, where now you straight party ticket, but then you have to go to page two to vote for any the judges, school board, things like that. Um, so I think it appears to be more of a bludgeon than a scalpel as a fix. And that's why I say I think I really think it was the folks downstate in the state house who thought the electorate doesn't know, so we're going to help them. And now there's a litmus test. And
Right.
that just feels, I don't know.
Well, they could have serious misconception. Uh, for example, I have voted in the primaries for forever, uh, and we voted Republican in the primaries for quite some time, um, our entire adult life. But that doesn't mean that I agree with everything the Republican Party stands for. Um, if you look at um, historically in Indiana, what's happened since Mitch Daniels became governor, when Mitch Daniels was governor, public education has, um, how do I say it nicely? Um, Talk about taking a scalpel to it, as you mentioned,
Right.
uh, big time. And I'm not in favor of the Republican plan at all for public edu. I've been a public educator my entire life, and I'm not in favor of some of the things that they want to do and the things that they have done. So to go back to that, then, if I ran in that case on an R, they would be assuming that I'm against public education. And
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm totally for public education and have fought for it and will continue to fight for it. So it's interesting. I mean, some of my friends are staunch Republicans. Some of my friends are staunch Democrats. Um, you can't just I don't think you can put people into a box like that and say, okay, you have to vote for everything the Republican Party stands for, or you have to vote for everything that the Democratic Party stands for. And then, you get these parties, Bob, in school board elections, like, okay, are they going to start making donations to these candidates for school board? And then whoever has more money is the one that's going to win the election, so to speak.
Yeah.
Uh, I really wish it would stay nonpartisan, but obviously, unless Ron does something that nobody expects, it's going to change. And I think you'll see the down the road, maybe in 2 years from now, we'll be talking, and there'll be different repercussions we can talk about at that point.
And I think we don't know all of the impact of all of it, because I think I'm going to take a zoom out just a little bit, and I look at communities that are um, the some of the school board race. I know we had one not too long ago at the Lake Central School Corporation. Some of those get heated. And I got to
But
tell you, as someone who is an elected official for one of the municipalities there in Dyer, um, I appreciate, because here I am, I'm going up my own hill each time. And so to have some distance from that is good. Um, I also find that I just did a show on. I also have a show here. I'll throw this up here. Region Republicans on WJOB, that I host on the fourth Monday of every month. And my last guest, she is one of I think one of the foremost experts on school choice
Mhm.
in the state of Indiana. And I wanted to have her on because I am a huge supporter of public schools. And I remember in 2011 when I had lost, that was I think one of the first times that, not the first time, I think it was perhaps the capital referendum that Lake Central was going for. And there was a huge push to get this capital referendum done. And in doing so, if you were a Republican, you were automatically against the school referendum.
Mhm.
And so I lost by the same percentage that the school referendum passed.
How about that?
And what they never seemed to ask was, I fully support capital referendums when they make sense. I think operating referendums probably require a little more thought and transparency, and I can get into my line on that in a second. But if I'm going to buy a house, if you're going to buy a house, I mean, if you've got $1 million in the bank and you're willing to spend it, God bless you, good on you. But for the most part, you need a mortgage to buy a house. Why
Correct.
is that any different than a capital referendum? So I support that.
Hmm.
Um, and building these new facilities, it does wonders for assessed value. I mean,
Absolutely.
what type of community do you want to live in? Why do people move to the Lake Central School Corporation? Why are people moving to Tri Creek in Crown Point, in these places? Because they're really good schools. The education good, the programs are good, and so there's this intrinsic value to that I want to live there. And so if you move there, values go up, and you hope to continue that. And so, yes, to get hooked with the, oh, you're a Republican, you hate public education. It's like that's not true.
Right.
And I had a lot of questions of her about, well, what does school choice mean? And I was educated a lot. I didn't realize that about 90% of the folks that move from whatever school you're assigned by virtue of your address and zip code are going to another public school. That there was some interesting things with that, but then there's obviously those that the money stays with the kid, and then they go to a private school, and we can you can argue that all day. Um, and so I agree, just to label someone. So if I ran, I mean, let's face it. I mean, I've worked, done politics for so many years. I'm, the president of our town council. I'm like Captain King Republican here in Dyer. That if said, oh, I want to, maybe I'll throw in my hat in the ring. Well, certainly I'm a Republican. I'm a fiscal conservative. Um, but aside from that, for people just to assume, in your case here, you may have to decide, well, what do I do? Because then people are going to make those assumptions that, um, oh well, if Bob gets in there, he's a Republican, so there's no more referendums, and all the teachers are going to get fired or something like that, and
Right,
there's 3 books that you can read. Well, that's not
right.
no, that isn't, and
No,
um,
but you're making a
it,
really good point.
yeah, and
That's
so I
exactly what could happen.
yeah, and I don't know what the answer is either, aside from it seems like this is done. So, like you
It,
said, maybe in 2 years we'll get back on here. We'll set an alarm on your phone for 2 years and talk about it.
we'll see how it is, but it's you know, political parties really. I don't know how much is really chosen. You choose your party because of what your belief is in education. I think it's always been more of a social issue, issues, I should say, why you choose what you choose. Um, I'm just not sure that any of that has anything to do with educating in public schools, in my social views, at all. So if I were a betting man and I'm not, I think this is going to be detrimental in many, many ways. Um, I hope it's not because the kids are at stake,
Right.
and we don't want them to suffer because of it.
Um, the next topic that I want to talk about here is something that I know nothing about. So this feel free to talk and we'll say bloviate, however you want to do. I have
Bloviate.
I have zero clue. Again, I was never a high school sports guy. That just it. I had other interests. Um, I have zero regrets in that, but I don't know anything about. You had mentioned we had some text and email conversations earlier that there was a bill out there that, and frankly, I should know more since I'm on WJOB and they're doing all of these high school, broadcasts now of the sports. What is this I hear about athletes moving from school to school? What is this bill?
Well, it's thanks for asking, Bob, because yes, I'm adamant about this bill. Um, in addition to teaching, I have a quite a bit of background in coaching and as an athlete myself. So I have a really good understanding of athletics. House Bill 1064. 1064 has a couple of things tucked in the bill, but the main thing that I'm against is this would allow student athletes after their freshman year of high school to transfer to another school district, another high school, uh, just for athletic reasons. So, what concerns me more than that is the Indiana High School Athletic Association is the one that pushing this bill. It's been in the past. You said you didn't know anything about athletics, but so the way it's worked, Bob, is if a kid has to transfer from one, or not has to transfer, they transfer from one school to another, then they have to physically move to do that.
Okay.
And, or, and I can get into some issues about that as well. This bill would would alleviate that totally. So, using as an example, let's say that somebody wanted to move. We'll take Crown Point and Lake Central out of the equation. Let's say that somebody wanted to move from Munster uh, to Highland just for athletic persons. They want to be on, say, um, the swim team.
Okay.
Okay, they can do that. They don't have to change their address in Munster at all, and they can swim on Highland's team and go to Highland High School, even though they pay zero taxes, zero referendum dollars to go to that school. And that I don't see how any of that can be good. Uh, all you need to look at is what's happening in college athletics. This transfer portal. I don't know if you follow college athletics, uh, but I am so turned off to college athletics right now because you have students that are transferring, student athletes that are transferring year after year after year. It's taken, you know, IU basketball as an example. Indiana being a basketball state, IU this season now has lost their entire team for next year to the transfer portal or graduation. They have nobody left. It's going to kill programs. If this were to go down to Indiana high schools, it's going to kill high school athletics. Yeah, we'll have some teams that are powerhouses, and we'll also have some teams that will have to close their doors because they won't have enough kids.
Right.
And it's a travesty. I'm really disillusioned with our state athletic association to kind of wipe their hands of this because they don't want to. They had to be the ones that would uh, approve these transfers and so forth. But I'm here to tell you I'm also wise enough to understand that this kind of, and I'll just call it cheating, transfer cheating. Let's call it what it is. It occurs already in our state. It occurs already here in the region. Whether some people want to admit that or not, it's the truth. And if you're
Right.
listening, you know it's the truth. Um, and if you're doing that as a coach, shame on you. I'm just going to say it, shame on you, because that's wrong. And this will just give it. It'll be an open door to do these things, which were uh, a month earlier were totally illegal to do. And I see no good coming from this. People can paint a picture where, oh, they're going to have better opportunity to go to this school and so forth. Okay, that's great. Move to that community, be part of that community, pay taxes in that community, pay referendum money in that community. Um, and I have spoken to, I don't know how many people, Bob, about this. I mean, hundreds of people. And I don't think, just like anything else, I don't think people really take a stand until it comes up against them, literally, until they feel
Right.
the effects of it. So I think parents may not understand this until their kid's spot on a team is taken by another kid who doesn't even live in their town.
Yes.
Then they're going to get a little ruffled at that point.
Well, I have found that the electorate is very reactionary. They're not
Hmm.
very proactive. They're very reactionary. For just as a side note on that, um, we just increased the utility rates in Dyer by about 10%. I don't. There hadn't been a raise since 2019, 2018, and 2018, 2019 dollars just don't go as far as they did. I mean, inflation. So we had to raise it. Nobody for public comment. Nobody said a word. It was advertised anywhere. And mark it now at 7:07 on Wednesday, April 2nd. When the bills come out, the first part of May, the community boards are going to light up. How could they do this? We need to get these people out of here. You know, they're doing this without telling us. Hey, we told you. That
Hmm.
you public notice. We had a public hearing. I called for public comment 3 times in a public meeting. Nobody said a word. And so they're very reactionary on that. Um, Help educate me on this here, just so I have this right here. So what you're saying is, and I'm just we'll just use, you know, I don't want to pigeonhole your school district or mine. So let's say I live in Hammond, and um, all of a sudden Lowell has like the basketball team.
Right.
And so then, in theory, they can start picking off all of the premier players at each one of the high schools and have this monster team down at Lowell. And say I'm a Lowell resident and I'm not one of the star players, but I want to do it because I like doing it. Now all of a sudden I live in Lowell, I pay taxes in Lowell, and all of a sudden some kid from Hammond comes in, takes not my spot, but a spot that I no longer have. And So I again, I don't know this. I'm not an expert, so I may sound silly to yourself or anybody listening.
No,
But
not at all.
so perhaps up in Hammond, then I don't have. They may have a team, and maybe now I'm the best, and I was mediocre at best, because that's all that left. Um, so am I getting that right? That basically
You're
you can have a couple of and who's going to subsidize that are going to be the taxpayers because they're the ones who the school district has said, "Hey, we want the best underwater basket weaving team in the world." And the residents have said, "Yeah, we're willing to pay for that." And now all of a sudden 60% of my team comes from outside of the area, aren't paying for it. Now I'm paying for other kids.
you hit the nail on the head, Bob. You're exactly right. Your example is spot on. Um, and if that's we could create powerhouses. And this recruiting, as I said, it already goes on. And people who say it doesn't, they need to get their head out of the sand because it
Yeah,
does. This will sanction recruiting. That's okay. This is great. We can do this now. It's going to create the exact same situations that you talked about. It will make some programs fold because they won't have enough kids.
right.
Um, and where does it end? Is it okay? Now that you've opened the door, so legally as a parent, can't I say, well, listen, my kid is a tremendous uh, vocalist in choir, but Lake Central has a great choir program.
Yeah.
I want my kid to go there, but I don't want to.
I live in Griffith,
I
and
live in
my property
Griffith.
taxes are what they are.
Yeah, I don't want to move. So, but my kid can go there now. I mean, where does it end? Where does it end? You're opening up a can of worms that you're not going to be able to put the lid back on the can.
Yeah.
It's a terrible precedent to set, and it's just I seem sometimes like I'm the only one that vocalizes this, and I put it, as you know, I put it on my social media every single week where we stand on this bill, and it's already passed the House over to the Senate, and it's still sitting in the Senate awaiting a second reading, Indiana Senate, um, and they have 27 more days of this session. So my hope is this thing just dies, but I don't know if it's going to grow legs from here or not. But need more people to write their state senator, to write their state representative, to tell them this is bad business. This is not good for kids um,
At
at
what
all.
point, and I was surprised again, I'm over at WJOB a couple times a month, and they're big into the sports broadcasting now for the high schools. And I was surprised, again, my own ignorance on the topic, that there are certain high level teams that when they have competition, there's scouts in the audience and everybody's oohing and ahhing over that.
All right.
In my thought, again, completely naive to this, at what point does it go from being something that you're doing in high school as to something that's quasi professional? I mean, it seems like to me, if we're recruiting folks, so I've got my boy is 9 years old. He's in third grade, and coming up here, partnering with Lake Central School Corporation, the NFL flag football team. He's going to do flag football for a handful of weeks. It's fun. I mean, isn't that what it's supposed to be? Supposed to be
Mhm.
fun. Now it seems like we're recruiting, and I'm thinking of the one movie with Tom Cruise where they're you know talking about money and that stuff. I mean,
Right.
so maybe educate me on this. It is that something that, hey, by junior year in high school, some of these folks are looking at a professional bent, and it's not about the fun anymore. Yeah, they're having fun, but I mean, is that when it happens? Are we
Well,
talking pro in junior and senior year?
I don't know if we'd be talking professional, but it's certainly along those same lines because we're doing the same thing that the colleges are doing, except, colleges now, they also, in addition to getting their an academic scholarship, to get their money paid to get you their degree. Now they're giving them extra money on the side for certain things. I was against that from when it started as well because again, now kids are changing colleges sometimes just to the highest bidder, and that just screams wrong to me all
Yeah.
over. It's rare where you have a high quality player now in NCAA football at a large school that is going to stay with that program for 4 years. And I just gave you IU as an example of basketball,
Losing everybody.
losing everybody. So where does it end? And it's now we're going to take it down to our Indiana high schools. It's not going to be a good thing, and I don't know how much I can state that. It's going to be a bad thing if it happens. And so I just want to encourage if you're listening out there and you're against something like this, alert the people that are
They can do
that'll
something
be
about it.
voting on this. And because I've had coaches that have communicated with me personally about this is already happening, Tim, at such and such a place. And if you're in sports, you kind of know this happens. You know, kids play, uh, for example, AAU basketball, big thing in Indiana. And, you know, they play with kids from other schools on the AAU team. Well, you're a kid. Wouldn't you want your buddy to play with you during the school year too? So what precludes kids from recruiting other kids?
Yeah.
This is a disaster waiting to happen, and people need to fight against this. It's just a bad thing, really bad thing, Bob.
Cool. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Like I said, I didn't know anything about it, but I know that just from following you on social media that it was something of note for you, and I thought, well, if it's something of note for you, we should probably spend a few minutes talking about it. And
Well,
so
it is.
I
Yeah,
appreciate you talking about that. There's two segments left that I want to do before I just keep rambling on, and I want to get to um your authorship of some of these books. Now, again, I now I can't remember if this was in our pre-podcast chat or now. I am not a reader. I'm just not. I never really found joy in it. I can take, if you want to say, um, here's something I read recently. I was interested in the Battle of Setauket in off of Long Island during the Revolutionary War. I bet you I read for a couple hours on the Battle of Setauket. But if you gave me an autobiography on, you know, somebody, I was watching on a show and I thought I want to read about this, so then I read about it. But it just wouldn't do anything for me. So I'm always very fascinated when I see that people um, have the fortitude to sit down and churn out something. I've got a couple other folks scheduled on this podcast that have authored things, and it just fascinates me how you can put all that together. I'm going to throw the graphic back up here for a second. We talked about Jeremiah wasn't just a bullfrog for a minute or two. I have this up here. I just stole this from your socials. The first thing I'll note is I was so I want to say tickled the first time because I think Jeremiah was the first book,
that's
if I'm not
correct.
mistaken. And I got to tell you, when I read it, when I read the title, I thought this has got to be one of the longest titles of a book that I have ever. I'll throw it back up there. Ever is Jeremiah wasn't just a bullfrog, a story of passion, pursuit, and perseverance, and pollywogs. And then your other ones came out. I think that this will be a little litmus test of our friendship. I think Waking Up to the Yawn Fest was your second one. Am I right on that?
That's correct.
Oh, look at that. See, I haven't talked to you in 30 years, and this is how much I keep up with you. And because it struck me as these are, interesting titles. And then the next one was, every man did what was right in his own eyes. And so they were very verbose titles. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And so tell me, in all of this that you have going on, you're celebrating multiple anniversaries a year, you've got kids, you've got a career, you've got all these things going on. At what point did you say, you know what? In the 4 minutes of free time I have a week, I'm going to write a handful of books. Tell me what made you do that?
Um, I've always enjoyed writing. Actually, the Jeremiah wasn't just a bullfrog. That wasn't the way the book was supposed to go at all. All three of the books, Bob, that you showed on the screen there, they're all Christian-based books.
Hmm.
Uh, but I want to make sure I talk about the next one and
Yeah.
before you let me go. But basically, my wife, who is absolutely the best person I have ever met in my entire life. I am so blessed to have her. Um, she said, "You need to write a book about track and field." And it's like, yeah, okay, you coached that for years, you did it for years. So I started writing, and it took a whole different turn. It wasn't about just track and field; it was about the people who poured into my life, where I could get to pour into other people's lives. So it's really a book to honor them, and I think if you've read it, you'll see that through and through and through. Um, Starting back when I was a little kid in elementary school in Highland, Indiana, and somebody described it in a review as it's how did this person put it? It's where the wonder years, yeah, the wonder years uh, meets the gospel while going through a love story. Um, and so it's like, wow, they hit it right on the head there. It's kind of exactly what it is. So really got a lot of good feedback on that particular book. And then the second book, waking up to the Yonfest of Leviticus and Numbers. In the Bible, you read the Bible, which I read every day. Um, Enjoy it. I enjoy the Bible. But if you're a first time reader in the Bible, you may remember this when you read it for the first time and you read Genesis and it's like, wow, this is just so action packed. There's so
Oh,
much in
the
here.
first couple books are exciting.
Yeah, they're exciting. They keep you your nose in the book, and everything is going great, and it's like, wow, this is really exciting. And then you turn to Leviticus and it's like, what happened? It's like, this is like one of the most boring things I've ever read in my entire life. And so this was my way to kind of make that come alive and show some relevance into what was going on back then compared to what goes on today. And then the same thing with the third book, which came out earlier this year. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. That's really it's a book about the. It's meant to be a study companion with the book of Judges, and so people that have you read a chapter in Judges, and it's like, okay, that's great. What happened? And it's a recap of that, and it's also connecting the dots to what you can do in your own life and what's happening today with that. So those three are. Um, I'm happy I wrote all those books. None of them are really uh, for money. I've never set about to author anything to make money. It's just like I've done my whole life. I just want to make a difference in somebody's lives, and if somebody can read one of those books and change their life, or maybe even give their life to the Lord, wow, I've accomplished what He wants me to do on that.
For those folks listening, are these books still available? You said one just recently came out. Are they still, if someone's interested, are they on Amazon? Do they contact you? I mean, where can folks find some of these?
Well, the latest book, Every Man Did What Was Right in His Own Eyes. Uh, the quickest way, my understanding is the quickest way you can get is just go to online to Barnes and Noble, and you'll be able to get that. But now I set the price on that purposely very, very low so people could buy these so they could use those in their study time.
Right.
Uh, the first book, I don't think is. available any longer, but I do have some copies here at home. So if people
I
would
was gonna
like
say
one,
you can't say that you haven't kept a couple for yourself, as
I do have a few. So
yeah.
if people would like one, um, that's no problem. I can get that to them, and they just have to contact me. I'm pretty easy
Okay.
to contact.
Sounds good. And you wanted to talk about you've got a fourth book coming out that you completed now or you're working on.
Well,
What can people look forward to?
well, it's a serious departure, Bob, from the other three books. This won't be a Christian book. Uh, I guess depending how you look at it, but it's not written from that kind of perspective. There was there is a young boy back in 2011 that was discovered buried under a storage shed in Gary, Indiana, um, and he was essentially murdered by his father.
Okay.
His name was Christian Choate, and I remember reading these stories about the discovery and about what the backstory was and so forth. His father was sentenced to 80 years in Indiana State Prison. I don't know if you remember this story or
Yeah,
not.
I do. I do.
Yeah, yeah.
We have and I don't want to go too much in here.
No,
We have a very good family friend who was one of the detectives on that case.
I need to talk to him.
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
need to talk.
We'll connect offline, and I'll share some
Okay.
stuff. But yeah, so we know all sorts about that.
And I followed all these, and you could read a gazillion newspaper articles about this. And it's really a sad case.
Hmm.
Um, and so I remember following that back in 11, uh, and then it just kind of died from the newspapers. Uh, and about 2 weeks ago, this it just came back to me. It's like, what's going on with that, or what about this young man? And so I just can't get him out of my mind. And so what I want to do, Bob, is I want to write a book telling it from his point of view.
Okay.
Okay, what really happened? How did I feel about all these things? He never got a chance to tell his own story.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to tell that story for him. It's going to take a lot of work. I mean, I literally just started
Okay.
on this book probably a week ago, and I'm about knee deep in notes already. Um, so anybody that's listening that has any information about this case, I want to do that to honor this young boy who just never got a chance at life, never got a chance to tell his story, never got a chance to do a whole lot of things. Um, and I just want to honor him that way. Hopefully, um, use some of the funds from this book, from the sales of this book, to finance different agencies that help prevent child abuse. As this kid he went through so much, and my heart just pours out to him. Um, so if you're listening and you have something that you need to share with me, please hit me up, and I'll come talk with you about it, whatever the case may be. But it's really on my heart to do, it, and I feel like I need to do it. And my wife and I talked about it a lot, and she said, "Well, do you think you're supposed to be doing this?" And it's like the way I look at it is, if God doesn't want me to do it, He'll shut the door. And if the door's shut, I'm not going to intend to go through it. But
Yeah.
as long as that door is open, I'm going to keep walking through and doing the very best I can, but in the most honorable way possible to honor this young boy.
Well, I give you a lot of credit for doing that. One of the I've never been a fan of scary movies or anything like that. Just I've never been comfortable, around that type of stuff. And then when we adopted my son, I was instantly in a flash. I can't even watch a television show where something bad happens to kids. I can't. I have this visceral reaction to it because I see my son's face on everything out there. And so that's me, but to have someone, explore and tell the story that couldn't be told, that's, I my thought is there's going to be a lot of prayer in that for you to
Oh
to get
yeah,
through some of that. That's what a topic.
it is. I mean, it's you can find a lot of art. It's horrifying. Uh, and how many other kids that are we'll never even know that go through very similar things, and it's a shame. It's a shame. I don't watch those movies either, Bob. I
Yeah,
don't
I
watch
I
TV
can't.
shows where kids get hurt. It
Yeah,
just
I just
scares
it's
me. Oh,
no. There's life is, mm,
yeah, you're
no.
right. And I mean, Mary and I, we have kids, but I have grandkids as well. And oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine some of those things happening to my grandkids.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just terrible. So that's my next quest. Um, yeah, as far as writing goes, uh, but we shall
Well,
see.
so the last plug I'll do before we get into our wrap up here is, if people are interested, they could go to barnesnoble.com uh, for we believe this last book here, Every Man Did What Was Right in His Own Eyes,
Oh, that's
or,
yeah,
or 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 they can reach out to you on social media. I think you're on Facebook primarily. Is reach out, and if you got a question, send them a note and ask.
absolutely. Ask, I
Um,
shall answer.
Sounds good. I have so as we wrap this up, you had asked me in the beginning, well, how long do these go? 20 minutes, hour and a half, 3 hours, whatever it takes to get the conversation out. And one of the stops that I've been doing with this is, I always enjoyed watching inside the actor studio. I just thought it was interesting um, to sit back and watch people talk about their art, their profession, what they're interested in, which you and I have done. But then he always ended it with the Bernard Pivot questions, and he altered them a little bit. But I thought that was such a neat way to really to talk with folks, to get something out of them, that hey, we're not talking about high school sports, we're not talking about elections, we're not talking about this is Tim Vassar, and these questions, that you may answer them differently at if we come back in 2 years to talk about the school board races, you may have different questions to them. um, there's 10 of them. I'll ask them, and we can go from there. Um,
Okay.
what is question number one? What is your favorite word?
Favorite. Wow. Favorite word. Oh gosh. Well done.
Well done. We'll come back to that one here. What is your least favorite word?
You disappoint me.
Now, these questions here are from I want to say the early 70s, and so I will massage them a little bit. The
Well, I was
the
around, Bob, in the early
Well,
70s.
I how these questions would be asked would be different now. The question number 3 is, what is your favorite drug? But I don't mean it in the 70s context of what is your favorite drug. The question I have is, what is your favorite thing that makes you feel good?
Helping other people.
If you were, faith aside, because as I know your faith is what you've shown, I speak to people of all sorts of different faiths. So I say, if your faith doesn't buy into the next question, maybe put a pin in that and just go for the question. If you were to be reincarnated, if you were to come back as something else, what would you be?
I'd be the exact same thing, Bob.
Be the exact same thing.
Because I'd be married to the best person I've ever met in my life.
That you couldn't ask for more there. What noise or sound do you hate?
Oh gosh, I hate people crunching, and I also hate people that not. I don't hate people. I'm sorry. I dislike this. I dislike the sound of people crunching, and I also dislike the sound of people that are constantly, repetitively clearing their throat.
Yes. Um, Now, normally in the questions, there's not much of a commentary, but as this is my show, I get to do what I
You can do
want.
what you want. Yeah.
There's a term for the crunching, and it starts with an M, and I can't remember it because it's
Yes,
a
I believe I
but
have that.
I have that too, to the point where if I brought my family in here and at Thanksgiving, I stand in the other room. I have to have a TV on. The sound of chewing and mashing and gnawing on foods I drives me up a wall. I can hear
Yes.
someone in the next room eating potato chips and it makes me want to throw a mug at them.
Yes.
I can't stand it. And then people come back and say, "Well, Bob, you're a loud chewer." I don't know this. Sometimes I turn the radio up on myself. I so as soon as you said that, I was like, "Oh,
Oh
another one of
yeah.
us in the group. I
Yeah.
can't stand it. It drives me up a wall." And oh, yes,
Yeah.
I
It
do.
always has my entire life.
And for some of my family members watching, you know who you are. You are a loud chewer, mashing and gnawing. Nah, nah. Oh, drives me up a wall. And so I do. I typically the layout at my folks' house is such that there's a dining room and an island, kind of open concept. I stand on the kitchen side up against the counter eating because I'm away. I can't do it. I just I can't do it. So
Yep. I'm with you.
the next question, question number 6. His question was, who do you want to see on the new dollar bill? But that's not my question. My question is, in America, we have statues everywhere. We have Mount Rushmore. We have, you can go into a lot of small towns where someone was. I lived in Pittsburgh for a while, and there's a massive, beautiful statue of Mister Rogers, who I just think is fantastic. There's a current attack on PBS that, yes, I believe PBS has gone astray, but I think the Mister Rogers, if we could bring that back, I'd fully fund that all day long. So the question isn't so much who do you want to see on the new dollar bill. The question is who do you want to see if there was someone out there, whether it's local or national, who do you think should have a statue of themselves where people would look and say, I need to know more about that guy?
Great question. Well, I would say, based upon what I'm currently doing, Bob, I'd like to see a statue then of Christian Choate, and people can ask, so what happened with this little boy? You
Great
know,
answer.
you know.
What noise or sound do you love?
Uh, Anything my wife says, she's the best.
Is she in the room with you? No, I'm kidding. I'm
She
kidding.
is not.
I know of your love for
She
your
is
wife.
not. I'm still. Since 1976, Bob. I'm still
Smitten.
smitten.
Smitten. I knew the word before you even said it. Smitten. Here's a word that I'm or question is question number 8. I'm almost done with you here. Um there are some people that I've spoken with that they have a list. I have a list. But then I also know that there's some people that the question itself isn't necessarily meant to insult your sensibilities, but I think we all have a word that we use. Question number 8 is, and this is on the airwaves, you could say whatever you'd like. What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, my favorite curse word. Wow. Um, I can't pass on any of these questions. I have to answer, huh?
I suppose on this one, for me, I've always thought it was, and this is where I would expect my counsel or someone to say objection leading the witness is, um, for me, it's situation dependent, where I will stub my toe And I screamed, damn it, louder than you've ever heard before, to the point where occasionally my 9-year-old has said it. Though it's been situation specific, and I can't get that mad at him because, you know,
Because Dad's doing it. Yeah.
well, one time he was playing with Legos and he couldn't get it done, and I walked past. I'm just observing. One of the joys of being a parent is engaging, but also observing. And he was trying, and he goes, "Ah, damn it!" And I was like, "Well, he's not wrong." It's, so
Uh-huh.
I tend to say they're not bad words; they're adult words, um, and so like I said, situations. You can pass on it if you'd like, but if there was one that you said, "This is my go-to."
Oh, I don't really have a go-to cuss word. I mean, I fall short just like everyone else does, but I don't have a go-to cuss word at all. No.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Question number 9 is, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I've never wanted to be anything other than a teacher. Um, I can't. Wow, that's a great question, Bob. Um, maybe maybe a medical doctor. Uh,
Okay.
maybe a medical doctor. Um, Side note on that, if I may, um, is it's in our my will that when I do pass, my body has already been donated to Indiana University School of Medicine.
Okay.
And our three kids are like, Dad, why do you want to do that? I said, well, now you can tell all your friends that your dad finally got into med school.
That if here we are an hour and 36 minutes into this, and that was our first dad joke. I think of the podcast. The Before I ask the final question, I love this final question, and it's something that I think about often. Um, but now you can see where I specifically said, "Hey, I told you I was going to ask these questions, but don't look them up. I don't want church answers. I just want the last question is." And sometimes around folks of faith, I get even a little choked up, asking this question because it's such a deep question. And the question is, um, it's worded with an if question, though I know there is. But the question is, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
That's real simple. Well done, good and
Good and
faithful
faithful
servant.
servant. Fantastic. I, Tim Vassar, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to uh, answer the call of a student from 30 years ago that says, "Hey, I'm trying something new. Hop on and spend some time with me, and let's talk about just stuff."
Yes.
So I can't thank you enough for taking time out.
Well, Bob, thanks for having me on there. And most importantly, Bob, as I tell every student I've ever had and every athlete, it's like, thank you, Bob, for letting me be part of your life. It's been a pleasure and been an honor.
Well, like I said in the beginning, there's folks that come in and out of your life all the time. And, some people are meant to stay, some people are meant to be agents of change, and some people, maybe you never know why they're just, I believe I haven't forgotten about you for a reason,
Oh,
and I do. We were friends on social media. I follow you, and you've always been a good, solid person that I've just I would rather have people like you in my orbit than not.
well,
So,
thank you very much, Bob. I
so
really appreciate that.
thank you for that. And I am going to switch off here, back to here. Thanks everybody for watching. This has been Dad Bod Walking, my new venture into telling stories here. My friend Tim Vassar was on. Check him out on Facebook. If you've got any questions about anything you've heard tonight, you've been in this almost 2 hours. He'll talk to you. That's all I've got for tonight. I'm going to play us out of here.